Hi, you guys. Nice to talk to you again. I talked to you last year for season one. Here we are for season two, which is super
Mhm.
exciting because I was like, oh, I hope that show gets to season two. And then it did. I had all the episodes, and then I was talking to you guys like a day yesterday, the day next day. So manifestation works. Here we are. So with season two, we have Alex. What was it like to fit him back in the family dynamic and not have him in the void?
That actually became one of our kind of larger aspects of the major arc is we wanted to really lean into the how do you fit into this family that's like kind of a well-oiled machine at this point, and now he kind of feels like a fish out of water. And so, everybody has felt that feeling of not really fitting in when you used to fit in a little bit. So we really wanted to play with that a lot, in addition to the larger mystery of, some potentially things going on with Alex.
Yeah. Is this Alex? um,
But we were always talking about like an experience like that can't be healthy. I
mhm.
mean, it's not like everything's fine. And, very rarely, I mean, a lot of times in shows and stuff, you just go on, but you're like, okay, you were like literally turned to stone and you're still living above cursed things.
Mhm.
How do you move on from there?
Yes. We also get to hear a little bit about Sky and her ancestors. Why did you want to bring that up a little bit? And are we eventually going to hear even more about her ancestors?
Well, one of the interesting things is a lot of the individual episodes of this season, we really like opened it up to the writers' room. Like, let's make this personal. What are stories that you want to tell? What are stories that haven't been told that you want to tell? And in that particular episode, Dimitri, our writer, like jumped in and was like, I have this idea, blah, blah, blah. And like deal with Sky's family, which, we don't get to meet them necessarily, but we loved this idea of bringing in this backstory. Um, so, I mean, who knows whatever happens in the future, but we loved that you could have that depth of family history.
I will also say that every character we have massive backstories on. Like we have histories, we have family lines, we have so much stuff, not necessarily to put in the show, just to kind of inform the character. So a lot of that stuff we know. It's not just like let's just throw the dart at the wall type of thing. And so by having that information ahead of time, it does help well round the character. So little bits do come out here and there. Um, yeah.
Speaking of backstories, why did you share Larry's backstory, a bit of his backstory, and what was it like to craft Larry's backstory?
Well,
Can I
that
take
goes
this one
hand in
too for
hand
a
with
sec?
hidden massive backstory. Yeah, go on, Jeff.
We Coop and I have always loved the Stanley and Larry dynamic. And so of all of the characters, they have far and away the most established history that we know. And we love to just like talk about it. Doesn't even need to be anywhere. We just go, oh, we know their whole origin. We know everything. And so we did share a lot of that with some of the people in the writers' room, and everybody was like, so a little bit of that seeped in. And then again, very similar to what Coop said before, is we kind of gave this broader idea, and some of the really smart nuances were brought in by the writers to really add that flourish. But yeah, I think that's just by nature of the fact that we just love those characters so much, and we do know so much about them.
And it was funny. One of the things that we really wanted to do this season was let each of the non-family members have an episode to really like. So there's the Larry episode, Stanley episode, Margie gets an episode where she's in, and we really love doing that because it's like, okay, let's really play with this.
Mhm.
Yes. What I also loved about the episode where Sky's ancestors are mentioned and Marge has a larger part, she has a larger part in another episode as well, is that this is a family show. And this is also not even talked about in quote unquote adult shows. is that racism is literally said. It's a plot point in this episode. How was it discussed in the writers' room to actually say racism, and how that was crafted into the story and introduced into a children's television show?
That honestly, that once again, that was a situation where this was something Dimitri was very passionate about, and Cooper and I like kind of like took a step back and we're like, you know what? Anytime we see someone with some passion about something, go with it. And this was something that he was very passionate about, and he really did a wonderful job of balancing something poignant to say without being preachy. And I gotta hand that to Dimitri and Ami and Kali, and I mean it just really was a lot of voices in the room that were passionate.
And by the way, it's funny because you would think that like studio and network might be a little bit freaked out by that. We got like support all like there was never like a doubt about it, where it was just sort of like, I mean, the only ever time would be like the exact wording of something. And it sounds weird. I don't even remember, you know, rewording things, but it was just like, okay, maybe we could, you know, make this clear. Or, I mean, honestly, we had to cut a lot for time, frankly. You know,
That
like we would
episode could
write
have
a
been
script.
twice as long. Yeah.
Yeah. We will joke that Dimitri really writes along, and he's like, well, you should be able to jam it all in there. And you're like, dude, we literally do not have time. So on the cutting room floor, there's even more backstory, which is, once again, we have backstory for everything.
Yes. So we get the introduction of Debbie this season, Pandora's friend. Why did you decide to introduce her this season?
We actually have always had Devi as a character from the get-go. But one of the things that we decided pretty early on with the first season was we really wanted to focus on the family. And that's why we set it during the summer. So it was summer vacation. We didn't have to worry about school or friends or anything. Let's just keep the focus on the family. So when we got to second season, we have them starting school. It just felt natural to be able to bring in, I mean, we in our minds and on paper, we had a lot of other kind of friends too, and we just really liked Devi, who is actually based on one of my closest friends, Devi, who looks exactly like her. By the way, when I showed her, she was thrilled.
By the way, it's very funny. Like a lot of characters are named after just people we know, because you're like, well, it's just easier. There you go, boom, Devi. What does she look like? She looks like Devi. Yeah, Caparaz. There's literally one of the executives at DreamWorks that were like, what should this big tough guy be named? Caparaz. What should he look like? Well, Jason Caparaz. But if he was like a foot taller and like 300 pounds.
I noticed this season that I feel like the horror and the scariness was brought up a few notches. Was that on purpose, especially with the dolls?
Honestly, I think. Sorry, Coop. I anytime there's a horror question, I jump in. I don't mean to jump. But I think with this, honestly, around this point, I think in the first season there was a little bit of trepidation as nobody was fully sure where we were going to land. Were we going to be too scary? Were we not going to be scary enough? And I think once, you know, we got a season under our belt, I think everybody started to feel comfortable with, you know what? We can push this a little bit more. So I think it was a little bit of, I mean, us, we're always trying to push. So that's, we know where that's coming from. But like, I think it was a comfort level with all the, you know, studio and everybody was just more comfortable with kind of letting us push a little bit more.
Well, and it's also learning to like what seemed to freak people out and what didn't seem to freak people out. And you're like going, oh, okay, creepy dolls. You know what? That seemed an opening where you're like, you can genuinely be creepy and scary, but it's not like something that people would really wig out about. You know what I mean? So you're like, oh, creepiness is always fantastic. That is very fun to lean into.
Yes, yes. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I can't wait to talk about season 3 and all of these backstories. And congrats on this. And I can't wait to talk about this in future projects.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.